And I'm going to give you a little more insight. But first, let's talk about the ways that offers can die, folks, because I told you offers are very easy to kill. Contracts are very difficult to kill. And so when you send an offer over, it's considered that kind of alive and well until somebody has killed it. I gave you a couple examples of how it can be killed. Understand that the offeror can revoke their offer anytime prior to unconditional acceptance. So if we submit an offer on behalf of a buyer, and my buyer calls me up and says, Seth, I've changed my mind. All I got to do is email the other party and say, hey, the buyer revokes their offer. That's it. I've killed it. The offeror can kill their offer anytime prior to unconditional acceptance. Of course, we said rejection by the offeree automatically kills it. You cannot go back and try to accept it anymore. It's dead. A counter offer is also a rejection. You cannot go back and try to accept the initial one. It's dead. Now, when we talk about other ways that it dies, lapse of time. Let me talk about this one for a second, folks. There are two different considerations for lapse of time. You could put what we call an expiration of offer in an offer. Think of it like the Mission Impossible sunglasses, where it's got like a self-destruct sequence. If you do not unconditionally accept it prior to a certain date and time, it will self-destruct and die, and it's no longer alive and well anymore. So we could say this offer is only good until, 12 o'clock a.m. on, November 25th. So you can put an expiration of offer in there. The other thing that comes into play with lapse of time is, according to basic contract law, offers are only good for a reasonable period of time. Folks, do me a favor. Go to the chat box. Tell me, what is a reasonable period of time for an offer to be alive? 24 hours? 12 days? 24 hours? 30 days? A week? 3 days? Every single one of you, not every single one of you, but a lot of you had very different answers. Folks, the answer is, who the hell knows? There is no reasonable period of time that has ever been defined. So even though they say that an offer is only valid for a reasonable period of time, they've never defined what that is. And so I want you to think about this. If you submit an offer for a buyer on a property and you're waiting to hear back, and it's been 3 days, 4 days, and your buyer decides that they want to go buy another house. Imagine that you say, well, screw that house. Let's go put an offer in on this one. And you put an offer in on this other house and it gets accepted. And then the day after that offer gets accepted and you're under contract on this house, you get a notification from the other party. Hey, congratulations, we've decided to accept your offer. Well, folks, it's been 6 days since you submitted it. And so they're going to say, well, we're under contract. And you're going to say, no, we're not, because it's not been a reasonable period of time. And they're going to say, well, no, yes, it has been a reasonable period of time. And you know who gets to decide? Oh, y'all learned my mannerisms so well. Judge Judy it is, Brad. That's exactly what I was going to say. Judge Judy it is. Although, God, I feel like a 90-year-old man with emphysema, like after like being sick, I'm like laughing and I'm just like raspy, right? Like I feel like I've like chain smoked like 82,000 packs of cigarettes. That's when I just... The Judge Joe Brown is pretty solid too. Okay, we like them both. Yeah, Lil Wayne Jr. That's what it feels like. Yeah, Judge Judy, folks. Anytime our clients are going to court, it's a bad day. So if our clients put an offer on a property, we haven't heard a response back, and we want to move on to a different property, what should we do? Yeah, rescind the other offer. Just call them up and say, hey, it's dead. It's no mas. We take it back. Just kill it. And then that way we don't have to worry about that. And then we can move on to the other one with no concerns. So we can put an expiration of offer. Never really should rely on a reasonable period of time. Now, this is where We're talking about very specific things. Right now, we're talking about offers. Offers are not contracts. But offers would die with destruction of the property. If we put an offer in on 123 Main Street and it burns to the ground before it turns into a contract, the offer is dead. Okay? Destruction of the property would kill an offer. Of course, death of the parties also kills an offer. Now, I want you to think about this. Who are the parties to a sales contract? In other words, who are the parties to an offer for real estate? There you go. Buyer and seller. And so do not get this confused, because think about it, right? I'm telling you where students get confused. If we were talking about an agency contract, we said agency contracts would die with death of the parties. Well, the parties in an agency contract is going to be either the seller and the firm for a listing agreement or the buyer and the firm for buyer agency agreement. But if we're talking about an offer, the parties are the offeror and offeree, aka the buyer and seller. So if a offer is submitted and the buyer dies, the offer is dead. If an offer is submitted and the seller dies, the offer is dead. But folks, if an offer's been submitted and the licensee, the real estate broker, dies, does that do anything to this offer? No, we're not a party to it. Sure, we may have typed it up. We may have had them sign it. We may have sent it. But we're not a party to it. So us dying does nothing to that offer. But death of the parties would kill an offer. Now, of course, the last one here, not really super consequential. You don't really need to know it. It's called supervening illegality. If something in the law changes that makes the offer now illegal, it would kill the offer. That's all that means. If something changes that now something within the offer is illegal, the offer is now dead. So offers are pretty easy to kill. You can take them back at any time. You can make them self-destruct. You can put, stipulations, all these different things. They're very easy to kill. Now, here's another thing that really throws people for a loop on the test. If you were to put an offer, right? You send an offer on behalf of a buyer client, and you put an expiration of offer, and you say, well, hey, you got 3 days before this offer self-destructs or expires and dies. How long do you think you have to wait before you could potentially revoke that offer? There you go, Brooks. Brooks says you don't. You don't have to wait. And this trips students up on the test a lot. You could revoke it immediately. Just because you said it will self-destruct in 3 days doesn't mean you have guaranteed to give them 3 days. Remember what we said. You can revoke it anytime prior to unconditional acceptance. So if you say you got 3 days, 30 seconds later, you can take it back. Be very careful on the test. Don't get caught up with the questions like that. Now, let me kind of give you an example of this, and then we're going to take this a little bit further, a little more in depth, kind of giving you an insight into the exercise I'm going to have you do. Okay, take a look at this one. Read through it. Tell me how you're feeling. It can be multiple choice, but I'm not going to do it as multiple choice. So tell me what you're thinking, and then we'll talk about it. Seeing a lot of similar answers in the chat. me just another second. So here's what happens. On Sunday, an agent receives a written offer from a buyer for $145,000 on a townhouse he has listed for $154,900. On Monday, the seller counters at $149,900 and gives buyers 3 days to accept. On Wednesday, the buyers reject the counter offer, and upon being informed, the seller says he will accept the buyer's original offer. Under these conditions, there is, and every single one of you is telling me there is no contract, and the reason is they countered, which means they killed the original offer. Is dead. And so when the counter offer wasn't accepted either, and they said, well, we'll go back and we'll accept your original offer, they don't have that ability anymore. They killed it, right? I said, think of it as a living, breathing thing. Once you kill it, you cannot go back. And as some of you said in the chat, could they submit that exact same offer terms to them as a new offer? Sure. But the ball's in their court to decide if they want to accept it at that point or not. So when we're dealing with the offer and acceptance piece, folks, I'm gonna go back to this grid here. Let me give you a multifaceted learning point in the time I can before I send you on break. If I got a phone call from Tara, and Tara says, hey, Seth, I found you on Zillow. You seem like a decent agent. Can you help me? I'd like to see 123 Main Street. I say, sure, Tara. Happy to. So I'm going to meet Tara at 123 Main Street. Folks, what is the first thing I'm going to do with Tara? There you go. The working with real estate agents disclosure. I'm going to say, Tara, it's so nice to meet you. Let's explain how agency works. Tara, please understand that there's buyer's agents, seller's agents, there's dual agency. I'm going to explain this whole shebang to her. I'm going to say, Tara, if you're not going to hire me, don't tell me your secrets. Do you understand all this? And she says, yes. And so I go over it with her. What's the next thing I'm going to do?
Y'all going to go see the house?
Not quite yet. Ask what she's looking for. Huh? I mean, I know she's at least likes that one house. There you go, Brooks. I got to form a relationship with Tara, right? I've got to have somebody in North Carolina. She hasn't hired me. Remember, the working with real estate agents disclosure is just a disclosure. It never, ever, 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 ever forms a relationship. So Tara and I have to form a relationship. So I'm going to say, Tara, listen, I'd love to be your buyer's agent, and we can either have a written exclusive buyer agency agreement from the offset, or we could start with an oral buyer agency agreement, which is non-exclusive and open-ended to begin with, if that makes you feel more comfortable. And so I say, well, Tara, which would you like to do? And here's what Tara says. Tara says, oh, okay. Oral buyer agency agreement or written buyer agency agreement. Seth, didn't you say when you were going to the working with real estate agents disclosure that they didn't have to have an agent? I'm going to look at her and I'm going to say, yeah, technically you don't have to have an agent, Tara. She's like, I'm going to go with that one, Seth. I don't want an agent. I don't think I need an agent. You know, the thing is, Seth, I watch a lot of Selling Sunset and HGTV, and I think I kind of know how this works. I don't really need an agent. So if you're fine with that, I'm not going to hire you. I don't want you to be my buyer's agent. I just want to see the pretty house. Folks, can I show Tara this house? Yes, as... Shots fired, huh, Antonia? She's like, how can you call me out like that? I should have used you as this example, because that's exactly what you would have said to me. I've seen every episode twice, Seth. That's what, yeah. As a seller sub-agent, okay? As a seller sub-agent. So Tara and I are going to go in. We're going to see this house. We're going to look around. She's just going to sit there. She's going to say, ooh and ah, and I love it. It's so pretty. And she gets done looking at it, and she says, Seth, I want to put in an offer. Can I put in an offer on behalf of Tara? Sure, I can. Sure, I can. I'm going to say, Tara, sure. What do you want to offer? Now, Tara says, well, Seth, what do you think I should offer? What am I going to say to Tara? Actually, that would be dual agency. I'm gonna screw Tara over, okay? And listen, I have no loyalties to her. Not telling her that, I mean, I could really take her to the cleaners, couldn't I? Because I don't owe her anything. So I could be nice and say whatever you think, or I could screw her over. But the thing is, what I'm probably gonna say, just to be a little snide about it, I'm gonna say, well, Tara, why don't you rewatch season 2 of Selling Sunset and see if it's in there, okay? Why don't you see if you can just figure it out, Tara? What do you want to offer? So let's just say I'm not gonna be a super big jerk, and that's all I say. And I say, I can't help you, Tara. What do you want to offer? And she said, fine, whatever. And we come up with some terms, folks. And let's just make this easy, okay? I write up some terms for Tara. It's $400,000 and, closing date of December 15th and, whatever terms. She signs it and I send it over to the listing agent. And let's say she sends it to the listing, or the listing agent sends it to the seller. Seller signs it and no changes, sends it back to the listing agent. Listing agent sends it back to me. And then I send it back to Tara. Folks, at what point were we under contract?
As soon as you received the
when the seller signed and sent it to the listing agent.
Yeah, that signature that the seller, remember the buyer, the offeror has already signed it when we sent it over. So then the seller signed it and sent it back to the listing agent. Listing agent sent it to me, and I sent it to Tara. So the question is, at what exact moment did it become a contract?
The moment all parties signed.
Nope, signature is not enough. It's the communication that triggers it becoming a contract. So you got to know exactly when it was communicated to the right party.
When you sent it to Tara because you aren't her agent?
There you go. Some of y'all caught on. Folks, I told you that communication has to happen to the offeror or the offeror's agent. Tara is the offeror. Am I Tara's agent? No, my loyalties are to the seller. I am an agent that is assisting her, but I'm not her agent. So we were not under contract until it was communicated to Tara directly. Do you see why I did this exercise? Don't get confused and say an agent that wrote the offer knows. That's not enough. It's the offeror's agent. If I am not Tara's buyer's agent, then I'm not standing in the shoes of Tara. She didn't hire me. I'm not her agent. We were not under contract until she was communicated with. Now, if she had hired me and I was her agent, that would change things. And then the second I knew, it would have been a contract, even if Tara didn't know. Everybody understand that distinguishing factor there? You've got to understand who people are working for. And I'm going to give you a little more insight to it. So here's what we're going to get into next. I've got an activity all about exactly what we're currently discussing on whether or not something has moved from an offer to a contract. And so this is, as I said, one of the activities that I always try to incorporate into pre-licensing class as long as time allows. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the activity with you. And I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. Why? Because there's a lot of you. So breakout rooms is basically where I put you in your little miniature Zoom rooms. So there's just going to be like 3 or 4 of you. So it makes it easier for y'all to have discussions with each other about this exercise. So I'm going to put it in the chat. Follow that link, get it open, make sure you can open it. And if you have any kind of pop-up blocker that stops it, you just may need to like copy and paste that link into a browser window. But this is what it looks like, okay? So it's typically, I use this exercise in a post-licensing class, but I think, some of them are really useful for you in this pre-licensing class as well. And I don't need you to do all of them. I want you as a group, because they go pretty fast, to do the first 8. They're very short, nothing too crazy, but you got to talk about them and make sure you understand. So once you get it opened up, I'm going to put you in these breakout rooms and I'll just kind of hop through the rooms and you have discussions and you figure out and answer the question. So like this one asks if we formed a contract. This one's asking if the buyer can revoke their offer. This one's asking if it's a contract, so on and so forth. And this will kind of give you some insight into, the moving from offer to acceptance kind of piece and how these questions can trip you up if you're not paying attention. Everybody with me?